Welcome back to One Bills Live. Chris Brown, Matty Glab, and joining us at this time, NFL insider for ESPN and friend of the show, Field Yates. Been a while, Field. It's good to see you, especially in person.
Long. I miss you guys. Great to be on with you. You guys know how much I love being on the show, and I love each of you and all that the show brings in terms of joy to Bills fans. So
yeah, you got a break.
Excited.
You got a break from snowy New England.
I thought you guys had a bad snow-wise in Buffalo, but
nope.
I was telling them before I actually came on, is that I left after 3 days of snow days with 2 young children in the house and about 30 inches of snow in my backyard. It's insane.
You got cabin fever yet?
Mother Nature is unrelenting. If you're looking for the most consistent force in the universe, it's Mother Nature, who had basically no snow planned for us until about the middle of January. And
might be getting angrier by the day.
Yeah.
I don't think winter's done yet. But in any event, so we've got some Bills stuff to talk to you about, and then obviously draft class to talk to you about. We know about the coaching change, so we'll start there, and I'll let Matty ask you about the defense. But Joe Brady, and now in the captain's chair here, and a lot of us are speculating as to how the offense might morph and change from a play calling perspective, because one of the root philosophies of Sean McDermott was to be balanced on offense. In the last 2 years, they're pretty close to 50-50.
Yep.
And then if you look at the history of the Saints offense, I remember Alvin Kamara having 3 straight seasons of 80 receptions. Like, what are we looking at, and how much more throwing could we see?
That was a random stat that I think, and I'll probably screw it up now.
In a James Cook kind of way?
But it was like Alvin Kamara had 3 straight years to begin his career. I think it was exactly 81 catches for 3 straight years. I do think you'll see a little bit more, skew a little heavier towards the passing game, and I think just more aggressive in general, right? These, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of the coaches that have a more defensive background tend to be a little bit more of, conservative, take the points, play to, sort of maintain the lead, right? Some of these younger offensive minds, we have seen this around the NFL, is that they're sitting there thinking to themselves, it's 4th and 1, and if we don't convert, it's the ball in somebody else's hands. However, if we do convert, it's our ball once again. We have a chance to score again. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more tempo, a little bit more of the passing game, and they've played very slow football over the past couple of years, they've played successful football. So these are not necessarily bad things, but if we're looking at ways in which this could change with Joe at the control panel entirely, those could be some of the elements that I think look a little bit different in 2026.
Yeah. We know that Buffalo's defense is going to go through the biggest overhaul as they hire Jim Leonard as their defensive coordinator, who comes over from the Denver Broncos. They're going to switch schemes from a 4-3 to a 3-4. How do you envision things shifting in Buffalo with what's currently on the roster and addressing that in the draft and free agency?
Yeah, that front seven's really where things matter the most. As you just do the number, right? 4-3 versus 3-4, and you've got guys who just have more prototypical builds playing a 4-3 or an even front versus a 3-4, an odd man front. So we're going to see some guys who maybe have been longtime pillars whose role might not be exactly the same, or might not fit entirely in this scheme. That's sort of one of the natures of making I wouldn't say a wholesale shift, but a notable shift from a 4-3 to a 3-4. I think some of the most important pieces, like those 3 guys along the defensive front, are so essential in a 3-4 because their job becomes a whole lot more selfless. They're going to have pedestrian stats. There aren't too many 3-4 defensive ends that rack up 10 sacks in a season. 3-4 defensive tackles, basically nose tackles. A lot of their job is to make life easier on the 2 linebackers behind them. We might see them address that via the draft, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But it is going to take a buy-in from some of these players who might be accustomed to doing certain things. And this is not saying these players won't be willing to buy in, but it is definitely a different responsibility. It's not playing left-handed after playing right-handed for the first X number of years for your career, but notable for sure.
Yeah, it's an adjustment. Absolutely. I know in your mock, and I realize this is a couple of weeks in the rearview mirror here, you had Peter Woods, the Clemson DT, going to the Bills, and I was trying to watch him and get a sense for his game, and I'm like, man, does that translate to the 3-4? Because I don't see him. He's 315. He's low enough. Leverage-wise, he's good enough.
He might be more like 298 or 299.
Right.
Oh, wow.
To me, that's not a nose. That's a 5-tech or a 4-eye, right?
I would agree, yeah.
So I think they need a nose badly, only because I think Deion Walker's too tall and he plays too high to play that spot. So I think they need a nose.
When you're playing the 3-4 scheme as well, some of these long lever guys like Deion is, you just got guys coming at your lower extremities nonstop, right? Your job is to get your hands on the chest plate of the offensive lineman in front of you, and you got to basically hold your ground and prevent them from driving you into the linebackers. And you might have guys coming at you for cuts or various lower extremity blocks. And you're right, you need some of those guys where those guys can really bend, and there's some good options there. And it'll be interesting to see how they, and not to turn this necessarily directly to the draft, but picking at 26.
26, yeah.
Yep, 26. There's probably like Katie McDonald, I'm sure, will be a popular name over the next 2 months out of Ohio State, who is a starting level nose tackle. It comes down to sort of the positional value and where Brandon B and his staff sort of assess that at. Because on the one hand, if he's a starter, you're drafting him in the first round. Like, that's logical. On the other hand, while there'll be a 3-4 defense in their base, how often are 4 defensive linemen on the field? It's a new league, right? Teams are throwing the ball left and right, that your 4th defensive lineman may not be on the field to begin the game, but he might be on the field as soon as the second play. If someone runs the ball for 8 yards,
to cut you off, but Jim Leonard has said they want to be. He considers his defense to be a multiple defense, which is the in vogue thing.
Everybody says that, right? That was great. It's true, right? I mean, how many defenses just line up and play? We are not in the days of Seattle back in the Legion of Doom days, which is basically say we're going to play what we do, we're going to be better than you are. So we'll see. But I think it's important for sub linebackers, nickel corners, 4th defensive linemen in these kind of 3-4 defenses to know that you're basically a starter even if you don't begin the game on the field with 10 other players.
Okay. With the Bills being at number 26, as you've evaluated this draft class, how many first-round grades exist truly to you?
Yeah, I think the number is probably, I would say it probably approaches 18 or 20, and I might be a little more generous with how I use the first-round grade than others. I'll say this. I like being at 26 more than I do 6 this year. I guess that would be the Browns specifically at 6. But there's a good, I hate to use the term middle class because I think it's underselling some of these prospects, but I think that the variance in prospects starts to become a lot narrower as we get further removed from number 1. If you ask me how many of the guys in this year's class are blue chip players, like the kind of guys that every single year they're going in the top 10 of a draft, sort of independent of the context of who's picking and what that team needs, 3 or 4. I think I would put Fernando Mendoza in that category. David Bailey from Texas Tech would be in that category for me. Arvell Reese from Ohio State would be in that category for me. Caleb Downs would be close to that category. Jeremiah Love, although he plays running back. So, it's 4 or 5 at max, maybe more like 3 or 4 if you sort of if you incorporate positional value as much as I think is important to do in the draft. So I'd rather be where the Bills are than a team picking 18 or 20 spots ahead of them.
And yet here's the conundrum, Field, because I think it's safe to say that if you're looking at Buffalo's roster and you say, where are the elite players there on offense? It's Josh Allen and it's James Cook.
They have offensive line collectively, I'd argue.
Yeah, they have a lot of good to very good players on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't see a difference maker that the opponent is game planning for.
Yeah, that's
and when you're telling me there's a half a dozen elite guys in this draft, I'm like, oh, geez, how are we going to get one? Now, I will say there is elite traits that you can probably get a little bit later, and I'll just tell you a guy, because I think if you're going to get an elite skill, the Bills' defense is screaming for elite speed in the front 7. Screaming for it. Dorian Williams, fast player, downhill guy. Maybe he's a Mike consideration. I don't know. 230. I'm not an expert on X's and O's or skill sets, but I love our Mason Thomas. I love this guy.
Heck of a player.
And he is elite speed, off the edge. Where do you see him on your board kind of coming off?
Funny, I tell people this is, this part of the year, so like the months of January and the beginning portion of February, for me at least, are usually dedicated towards, I'm hammering away on the guys that are probably more in like the 150 to 350 range, right? Because I spent the season focusing in on the guys that are going to go in the first round and the guys that are probably more fringe first round, maybe day 2, day 3, early day 3. And then once I've gotten exposure to every player who's been invited to the Combine, I get back to business at the top. And R. Mason's one of those guys that I sort of rework through my top 32 to 50 guys. You're like, this guy goes 20th overall. Am I going to be stunned? No, he's got amazing burst. If he runs the 40 today, which I think he said he is planning to, he will absolutely nail it. He is incredibly explosive, played through injury this past year, plays 1,000,000 miles an hour, great energy, great effort. He's got some real heavy hands as well. He may not be 265, but if he's 252, 3-4 outside linebacker, plenty of size.
Yeah. He told us yesterday here at the podium, I'm a 250 guy.
Yeah, which is totally fine for that scheme. So him, Cassius Howell from Texas A&M, same sort of like dynamic athlete coming off of the edge. Big question with Cassius Howell is that he's got these. I hate to say, I'm probably have 25-inch arms, but he's at maybe a little bit shy of 32-inch arms, which is not long for pass rushing standards. But guys that have some serious juice. Zion Young from Missouri, who's got all the measurables you need there: long arms and big, strong, powerful hands as well. Maybe not quite as explosive as those other two guys.
More of a power guy, right?
More power. Had a great season last year, 6.5 sacks, 2 years at Missouri, 2 years at Michigan State, which I have a third of my database of players that actually played at one school. It's the norm now.
It's so different now.
My gosh.
If there's one positive that comes out of that, getting used to a new scheme.
Yeah, you're seeing guys in different
a lot
schemes,
of these players have had to do that, so they come to the pros to a new scheme. Having been through that, I'm trying to find a silver lining.
Well, also because of switching scheme, when you're watching tape on these guys who are going into the portal and playing for 2 to 3 schools, do you feel like schemes are more vanilla because you're having to shift players in and out year to year, and it's hard to get everybody on the same page quickly?
Offense, I don't think that's the case because there's just so many different ways to skin the cat. Defense, you might see a little bit more of crossover from one year to the next. I think it's probably a little bit of an easier evaluation when it's a guy, I'll use Cassius Howell, who went from Bowling Green to Texas A&M, kind of a more understandable leap. It's not just maybe there's NIL money involved, but it's also an opportunity to get exposure against bigger competition. You got guys who are going from, Texas Tech has a pass rusher in Romello Height who might go late second, early third round. Played at 4 schools, but big schools: USC, Auburn, Texas Tech. I'm blanking on the 4th at this moment, and so those are a little bit trickier to evaluate.
Right.
Sort of, and I don't, these guys, it's their prerogative, right? It's the new world of college football. This stuff happens, but they can be a little bit harder to evaluate from one scheme to the next, just because they're playing at high levels, they're playing with good teammates around them against good competition, and ultimately water finds its level with the draft. So good players are going to go high, but there's some complicating factors.
Other defensive positions, because the Bills are going to be in the market for these. I think they're going to see more upheaval there personnel-wise than we've seen in a decade, because you don't have guys that have been in the same system. You know their fits, to your point that you made earlier. Corner class is considered to be good, maybe even more at the nickel position.
Yeah, really good.
Where the Bills have a guy that's going to turn 30 in July, and Taron Johnson.
Maybe a safety.
You may need a guy in the pipeline here.
Yeah.
And with the way teams are running the ball now, you need a bigger, sturdier nickel that can double as a linebacker. I love Keontae Scott from Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy plays like a linebacker.
He certainly does. Yeah, Miami's got a couple of good defensive backs that played immensely physical this past year. Keontae just felt like every time he was on the field, it was a big play waiting to happen, a destructive play waiting to happen. A lot of his damage done near the line of scrimmage as well. Not too many nickel corners that you can say are close to the tone setters of your roster, but Keontae would fall into that pretty rare category. He's an example of one of the better nickels in this year's class. Man, there are a lot of guys. Jaden Candidate from Oregon, a guy probably goes late 3rd, early 4th round. Had a great year this past year for Oregon, multi-school player, but just really frisky. Got guys on day 3 that I think will end up getting drafted as potentially startable nickels. But yeah, this corner class maybe at the top is a little bit more complicated. I don't know that Mansour Delane from LSU is your prototypical first corner off the board every single year. He might be the first one this year. Jermon McCoy from Tennessee is an amazing prospect, but
he's going to be long gone before the Bills.
He will be, yes, but he's not even working out this
week
because the ACL tore 13 months ago. So there's some this process hasn't changed entirely from where it was 10 years ago, but one of the themes this week at the Combine is how many players aren't working out. So it's a different world of scouting compared to where we were between multi-schools and minimal Combine participation, and guys electing to do some portions of the combine, but not others. So different world we're in right now, for sure.
Flipping to offense, if the Bills are interested in selecting a wide receiver in the first round, around that 26 range, who will be some wide receivers available that can also be difference makers?
Yeah, so I think we got to talk about guys that maybe fit into like what they need right now. And I'm not really in the business of like piling on further to Keon Coleman. I just want to note that like sometimes when you have a draft pick that hasn't gone as planned, it can create a little bit of scar tissue. And I say that because one of the names that I've seen often linked to Buffalo is Denzel Boston from University of Washington, who when Keon ran, he ran a 4.61, I believe it was, at the combine. I don't think Denzel is that level, but if Denzel is a 4.54, for example, 40-yard dash time, a lot, if not all of the same scouting staff might be like, I don't think that's the path we want to go down to fix some of our wide receiver question marks. So Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M, who, he's a slot in some people's eyes in the NFL, and the Bills don't need a slot with Khalil Shakir, but if he does run, will flat out fly. He was one of the best big play receivers in all of college football last year, 3 seasons in college, 25 receiving touchdowns, 2 punt return touchdowns last year for Texas A&M. Dazzling speed. 7 drops this past year was a real problem.
Yep.
I thought that, going back and looking and reviewing those 7 drops, they felt much more concentration than like actual hands issues. But drops are drops. I don't think that Josh Allen or Joe Brady is going to feel any better about or any worse about a drop if the player comes onto the sideline and says, I just wasn't concentrating enough, right? Yeah. So those are a couple names that could register there for the Bills late in round 1. Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana, a name that's super reliable as well. If he runs, he might be high 4.4s, maybe low 4.5s as well. But excellent after the catch.
I want to expand this conversation a little bit because there are some people who look at Keon Coleman and say, well, it doesn't look like he can be the X they hoped he can be. They still need an X, so that's what they're going to draft at receiver. Yeah. And then there are other people that say, somebody's got to get open. Like they need a separator.
Sure.
They need someone who can win against man coverage when it's third down, and they got to make a play.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that necessarily takes us because there's a dichotomy in that conversation about what people believe the Bills want to add. So are we talking like a guy like Jeremy Bernard who can do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, he's a solid player.
Can line up outside, can line up inside. Like, do you just get a guy that covers more of the bases, or do you get a dynamic talent like a Zachariah Branch who's going to sacrifice size but is lightning fast and can separate from just about anybody? Like, where do you maybe talk about those two guys, and where do you go for the best answer?
Yeah, Jeremy Bernard is sort of like buttery smooth. He's a 3-school player. Get used to that, right? Michigan State to Washington to a couple years at Alabama as well. Sort of the most reliable player in an Alabama offense. It had a lot of talent. Ryan Williams was a highly recruited wide receiver, but Jeremy the past 2 years has led the team in receiving yards. Just kind of Mr. Steady Eddie. Zachariah Branch had 1 season at Georgia after a couple at USC. 60% of his targets this past year were right at the line of scrimmage. He's a tough projection in that regard, and that it's possible he can really separate downfield. He wasn't asked to do it much. Maybe the most dynamic field flipper in the class is a guy named Brennan Thompson from Mississippi State.
Really fast.
Previously at Oklahoma, is going to be one of the fastest players at the Combine this year. If the Bills ever drafted him, I would require him and Max Hairston to do a 40 against each other. See how that goes. Brennan's sacrificing size. He's 5'9" and change. But, he might be 4.28 like Max, maybe even a 100th or so faster than that. So, capitalizing on Josh's arm strength, which obviously is not going anywhere, Brennan Thompson will be one of those guys that it may not be 8 catches a game, but it might be, a few catches a game, and one of them goes for 60 yards, and you're saying to yourself, that was easy. And sometimes it's nice for the offense to have a drive that can go fast and make you feel good about yourself.
We're already being told that our time is up with you, Field. So,
okay, yes.
We appreciate the time you gave us.
Of course, good to be here.
Always great to have your insight.
Yeah.
I know you're cramming and jamming on this draft class, so we figured we'd pick your brain and pull some people out of there and get your thoughts on them and the Bills as well. So we appreciate your time as always.
Great to be here.
We will catch up with you down the line. Good luck with all your responsibilities here the rest of the week.
I'm going to find my way. A lot of steak and shrimp this week. Power us through.
Thanks, Field.
That's
Good
Field
to see you
Yates,
guys.
NFL insider, joining us for ESPN.